Welcome to Highline Excel 2016 class video number 19. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, Business 218 video 19 start or the finished file or the PDF file, click on the link below the video. Hey, we got to talk about the amazing advanced filter, and we're going to use it to transform data sets. Here's a bunch of examples we're going to do. Let's start by going over to AF1. Now, advanced filter. What does advanced filter do? Advanced filter is useful when you have complex criteria and you want to extract records and or fields from a proper data set, and you don't need it to update upon refresh. If you needed to have it refresh, we'd be using Power Query. How is it different than the filter feature? It's different than filter feature because it allows you to place the specified criteria in the cells in the worksheet rather than hidden behind the filter dropdown. Now look at this down here. Our first example is we need to get the records that match the criteria. The date is greater than or equal to 10/1/2016, and the date is less than 3/31/2013, and the customer equals Amazon. Not only that, but we need the fields region, product, and sales. We're actually going to put all of this criteria down on the face of the spreadsheet. We'll be able to see it and change it and then rerun advanced filter. Remember, if we were using the filter feature, we just have a little drop down. We would select the criteria, but it would be hidden behind the scenes. We would have no visual indicator of what criteria we selected. How is it different than Power Query? It's different than Power Query in that it does not automatically update when you click the refresh button. We can rerun advanced filter, but it takes a few steps. When to not use advanced filter. If you only have a few criteria for extracting records from the data set, then use the filter feature. If you just need to get West and Gigi, and you don't need to see the criteria, and you're not going to rerun it a bunch of times, then by all means use filter. And we saw lots of examples of and criteria and or criteria and complex criteria using the filter feature. So if it's simple, use the filter. The other main reason we don't want to use advanced filter is if you need the process to update when you click refresh, then use Power Query. When to use advanced filter? When you have complex criteria, when you need to see the criteria on the face of the spreadsheet, and you don't need the process link to the source data. Now let's look at our first example. We're always going to have three areas. The data set area, that's just a proper data set. Field names at the top, records and rows, empty cells all the way around. The criteria area, we're actually going to have to list field names and criteria below. Now, we already know how to do this criteria area fluently because we used D functions back in video number 6. And the way we set up the criteria area is exactly the same as D functions. And the third area is the extract area. In the extract area, that's where the records will be pasted. And that's where we list the fields that we want to tell advanced filter to extract. All right, let's do our criteria. As you recall, we have to put comparative operators and the criteria. So I'm going to say 10/1/2016. So that's greater than or equal to 10/1/2016 tab. And we want it less than or equal to 3/31/2017. And we want it equal to the customer Amazon. Now, if I type Amazon like this, that contains criteria. That means it would search through the customer column over here and find any item that contained Amazon. Now, for this example, it wouldn't matter because there's no like Amazon Freshes or new Amazon in this column. So we wouldn't have any problem. But if we want exactly something, let's use the proper comparative operator, which is the equal sign. But as you recall from our study of D functions, you cannot put an equal sign and text because Excel will think it's a formula. So the trick is you put a lead apostrophe. A lead apostrophe says, hey, this is text. There's our criteria. You have to have the field names and criteria below. Now, for an and logical test, you list all of the criteria on the same row. Not only that, but of course, if you have criteria looking at the same column, you repeat the field names. Now, I want to remind ourselves about D functions. Here's our proper data set. Here's our field names and criteria. If our goal is to add sales, we can simply use the dsum. Remember, dsum said, hey, where's the database? I'm simply going to click in the top cell, Control Shift right arrow, down arrow, Control backspace. So when we get to advanced filter, we're going to have to show advanced filter the database, just like our D functions, comma, the field. This is different than advanced filter. But for dsum, since we're adding, we need to tell dsum which field we're adding upon. Now, I'm going to click on sales. Then I'm going to click on the field argument in the screen tip and hit F9 to evaluate, because I want to hard code that in. By putting sales into field argument, it tells dsum which field to add. And our criteria, there's our field names and criteria below. Now, we're just doing this to pull the parallel that the criteria area and having a proper data set is exactly the same for our D function. So when I hit enter, there is the total. Now, remember, advanced filter actually extracts records. And we don't want just the total. We want to see all the records for the columns region, product, and sale. Now, how do we do this? We click in a single cell, data. And there it is. We click advanced. And there's our dialog box. I'm going to use the keyboard throughout this whole video. So I have a single cell selected, Alt-A-Q. Now, it got the data set right because we have empty cells all the way around. We want to say copy to another location. There's the list range, the criteria range, field names, criteria below, tab, and copy to. This is the text box where if we click a single empty cell, it will extract all of the fields and list the field names. But that's not what we're going to do here. And in most of our examples, we won't. We'll only be interested in certain columns. So I highlight 1, 2, 3. Now, those 3 columns say, hey, only get those 3 columns. All of the records will be placed below this. Now, you want to be careful. Don't have anything below where your extract area is, because every time advanced filter runs, it deletes everything below. And that's it. We'll talk later about unique records, but that's it for us. When I click OK, boom, just like that, it got all of the records between these 2 dates and for the customer Amazon. Click in the top cell, Control down arrow. So it got a bunch of records that matched that criteria that we list in the criteria area and the criteria for which columns to extract. Now, if we change the criteria, if I come up and I change this to OD customer, we can see some ODs over here. Now, when I rerun this, I'm going to click in a single cell, Alt-A-Q. What? It remembered. Now, before we rerun this, I'm going to click Escape. And we want to go look what happens. There are 2 defined names, one for criteria area and one for extract area. If we go up to Formulas, Name Manager, and click, or use the keyboard Control F3, there are the names. Now, criteria and extract, those are names on this sheet. If we, in this workbook, create a bunch of advanced filters on different sheets, there will be a criteria defined name and an extract area for each one of the sheets when we use criteria area and extract area. I'm going to click Close. Now let's rerun with our new criteria advanced filter. Click in a single cell, Alt-A-Q, copy to another location. And look at that. It remembered the list range. That's our proper data set. Our criteria area, if I click here, you can see it's got field names, criteria below, and copy to is our extract area with the range of cells of our field names that we want to extract. When I click OK, it completely changed. And if I go down here, those are all the ODs. Now, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to change this to 3, 1, 17, enter. Alt-A-Q, you actually don't need to click in a single cell any subsequent times because it's all memorized. Copy to another location and click OK. And just like that, it got only March 2017 customer OD. Now you can see it left the formatting down below, but all of the records itself have been deleted. All right, now let's go over to our next sheet, AF2. And now we want to talk about OR criteria. Just as we talked about with our D functions, OR criteria is listed on different rows. AND is always on the same row, OR is on different rows. I'm going to click in a single cell, Alt-AQ. It got the list because we had a proper data set with empty cells all the way around. I want to copy to criteria range, field name, and OR criteria below. Tab the copy to. We have different columns we want now, date, product, and sales. When I click OK, there are our records. That is simply amazing using OR criteria. These are all the records for date, product, and sales for Amazon or Google. Let's go over to AF3. We want to talk about contains criteria. Our goal is to get records that match this criteria. Dates greater than or equal to 1/2017 and less than or equal to 1/4/2013, so only 4 days, and any region that contains West. So you could see over here we have West and Midwest. We might have Northwest or Southwest. So what do? We don't put an equal sign. We just type West. So there are our 3 AND conditions, our field names. Criteria, in essence, for which fields to extract. I click in a single cell of our proper data set, Alt-AQ. Copy to another location, the criteria area. There it is, between these two dates and contains West. Tab and the copy to. I'm very carefully going to highlight these 2 field names. That's telling, hey, advanced filter, only get date and sales columns. When I click OK, there it is, our 4 records. If we were to highlight this and look down in the status bar, there's our total for sum. If we look up here, our D functions, remember, they work exactly the same way. And we get exactly the same number. Now let's go over to AF4. Here's complex criteria. Our question is, hey, date column, please find all the records that are greater than or equal to 1/1/2017 and less than or equal to 3/31/2017 and a sales rep Gigi and the customer Amazon, or all of this is and, but it's or. It's like there's an or right in between there. Or records between these 2 dates and sales rep Gigi and customer OD. I'm going to click in a single cell, Alt-AQ. Copy to another location, criteria, field names, and or criteria below. Tab, copy to. I'm going to tell it only give me date, product, customer, and cost of goods sold. Now I click OK, and just like that, I've extracted the records. That is absolutely amazing. Now I'm actually going to jump over to example 6 before we do 5. Here's our data set. Transaction, date, time, sales rep, region, website, product, units, discount price, type, and net revenue. And our goal is on a different sheet to extract the year 2017. Well, I'm going to start over here. And I'm going to copy the field name, Control-C. I'm going to come over here to AF6, click Control-V. There's the column header, or the field name. And below it, I need the criteria. I do need 2 because I'm going to go between the beginning and end of 2017. But actually, I'm going to do some formulas. Over here, I'm going to say year, Control-Enter, Control-B, Enter. And I'm going to type the year 2017. I actually want to simply put a year here and have the criteria totally update based on this year, and then we'll have our fields down here. All right, so the first formula, I'm going to use the date function. But before I can use the date function, I have to say equal, and in double quotes, I have to say greater than or equal to, and double quote, join it, and I'm going to use the date function. The year, there's the year, comma, the month 1, comma, the day 1. Remember, date function creates a serial number date. Now, it's going to kind of be shocking when I hit Enter because, remember, formulas can't see number formatting, although date function in a cell delivers a number formatting. In a formula, it doesn't do that. Now, advanced filter works perfectly just like that. You can leave it like that. If you don't want to see the serial number, you want anyone who looks at this to see a visual date, then we have to use the text function. We learned about text functions back in video number 8. There's the value, comma, and the text function takes a value. And if we know a custom number formatting, it will display it as text in double quotes, mm/dd/YYYY, and double quote, close parentheses. That's pretty fancy. And there's our greater than or equal to. When we change this to 2016, instantly that updates. Control Z. Now I'm going to cheat and come over here and just copy this whole thing in edit mode. Control C, escape. Put it in edit mode, Control V. And I very carefully, because this is the upper date, I need to say anything less than or equal to. And instead of the month 1, we put 2. And instead of the day 1, we put 31. And there we go. All right, so I added some formatting and actually moved all this down. These are the same formulas right here. And we want to try this. Now, let's click in some empty cell and do Alt-A-Q. And what happens is we're on a sheet without a data set. Our cursor was not in a data set, so of course, it didn't know where the data set was. Now, the cool thing about this is I can actually tell this text box to go on any other sheet in this workbook. I could also click into a different workbook and extract from a different workbook. So list range, our data set is on the sheets AF6 data sheet. So I click there. I click in cell A1, Control Shift right arrow, Control Shift down arrow. And now I'm going to hit Tab. And when I hit Tab, it goes to the next text box and automatically brings me back to the sheet where I started this. Now I actually want to click Copy to another location. The criteria range, there it is. Tab and Copy to. Now in this example, I'm going to click in an empty cell, and that tells Advanced Filter to extract all of the fields. So when I click OK, there it is. There's all of my columns and all of my records, but only for the year 2017. If I click Control down arrow, that's a lot of records. That's on all the way down to row 1,291. Now let's change the year, 2016, enter. And now Alt-A-Q, and check that out. We have to re-enter. It did not remember like on the other sheets. I click on AF6 dataset, Control Home to jump up to A1, Control Shift right, down arrow, Tab, and there we go. I want to make sure and select Copy to another location. And when I click OK, instantly I have 2016. So this trick works. As long as you click in a single cell and open it up, you can direct Alt-A-Q that text box anywhere else in this workbook or any other workbook. Click Escape. Now we've got to go back to 5 because here's one of the amazing uses for Advanced Filter. If I want to extract a unique list of customers, I could copy this column, paste it somewhere, click Remove Duplicates. I could create a pivot table and drag the customer field to the row area, but then it would be inside of a pivot table. But Advanced Filter, I can simply say, look at this column, check Unique List Only, and boom, we will get our unique list. Click in a single cell, Alt-A-Q, and check that out, Alt-A-Q. Now, unfortunately, I already did it on the sheet, so it remembered the last time I did it. Most of the times when you are doing it for the first time, it will automatically get the whole sheet. So you have to be sure and redirect list range if you're extracting only a single column or whatever number of columns. So I'm going to click in the top cell, Control Shift down arrow, Tab. Now I want to say Copy to another location. There is no criteria range, although for, and I'm going to scroll up here. For unique records only, you could have criteria, but we do want to check unique records only and then click Copy to. And I think I'm going to click in I4, click OK. And just like that, we have a unique list. Now I'm going to do another unique list, Alt-A-Q, and remember, Copy to, and we have to make sure that we get the right column or series of columns we want. Control Shift down arrow, Tab. We don't have any criteria. I definitely want to change this to like K4 and check unique records only. When I click OK, there's the unique records for the sales rep and customer column. Now we got to go look at our last amazing example for advanced filter. And I actually want to go look at the end result first, which is in a different workbook. My goal is to create this report right here. It's only a certain number of countries we're interested in and a certain number of years. And on the inside are GDP numbers. Now we're going to actually have to extract all of these records from a huge data set. So I'm going to go back over to our Business 218 Video 19 Start file. And now I want to go over to AF7 data set. Here's what we're trying to do. We have country, indicator, name, and then from 1970, control right arrow, all the way to 2013. And all of these numbers are GDP numbers. Or actually, they're not just GDP. They're a bunch of different numbers. It tells you for each country what the metric is or whatever they're measuring. So for Afghanistan, here are all of the labels for all of the numbers for each one of the years. And our goal is to only get gross domestic product. So there's an example of one. And down here in Albania, there's another gross domestic product. So if I control down arrow, there's like 3,000 records here. And so for this column, we're only interested in gross domestic product, GDP. Not only that, but we've been given a list up here. We want Argentina, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Finland, France, and so on, like 25 different countries. So that would come from this column. Now, we could do this with Power Query, and in fact, we would do it if we needed it to refresh. But Power Query would be much more complicated than using Advanced Filter. Not only that, but if we did Filter, we would have to, from this list right here, click the drop-down arrow and check and uncheck to get all the right countries, which would be kind of tricky there. Not only that, but our third criteria is we only want the columns. And if I scroll over, we only want, whoa, there's a bunch of them. 2000 to 2010. So how in the world are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to do it two ways. And we're going to start with a helper column. Remember, we need only GDP. So I'm going to start with a helper column 1. And I'm just going to say, hey, is this cell, 2 cells to my left, relative cell reference, are you equal to, and watch this, I'm going to cheat. I don't want to type it out. Gross domestic product. Then I'm going to double click it and hit the F9 key to hard code that in. So there's our true false formula. Control Enter, double click and send it down. So you can see we get a true there because this, in essence, line has gross domestic product. Now, how in the world are we going to check if the country matches this list over here? And this list is in a single cell. Well, notice I use the phrase check if this country is in this list. And we've done this a bunch of times in this class. Now, if it was actually in a list of cells, we would use the match function. But instead, I'm going to check if this text, smaller bit of text, is within this larger bit of text using the search function. And so we're going to use the search function. Search. And I'm going to find what text? Relative cell reference, 1, 2 to my left, comma, within, boom, there it is right there. If it finds it, remember, search will tell us the position that it finds it in. So if it finds Argentina, it'll be like 1. If it finds Belgium, it'll be like 10 or whatever that is. But I need to lock this all the way down. This is amazing. Control Enter, double click and send it down. Notice we get a bunch of values because none of those countries are there. But when we get down to Argentina, there it is. Search is saying I found Argentina in that larger text up there in the first position, meaning the first character. If we scroll down, there's Belgium. So it found Belgium in the 12th. Control up arrow. Well, what are we interested in? We're interested in the number. So I say is number. Close parentheses, Control Enter, double click and send it down. Now watch this. And there it is. GDP, only when we get 2 trues in a row do we want this record, meaning we need these numbers for the columns 2001 to 2010. So watch this. Since I don't want multiple columns, I'm going to create yet a third column here. And this will be the one that we use. I need to make sure this is true and this is true. Now I'm going to copy this in edit mode. Control C to copy it and open up the clipboard. If your clipboard doesn't open, then click right there. So I have that little bit right there. Escape, and now I'm going to come and copy this bit. Control C. So I've loaded up the 2 bits, and now I can use what? The AND function. So AND, logical test 1. There it is, logical 1. Come to the end, comma, logical 2. It's going to be this is number. Close parentheses. That right there is the formula that will give us the true, meaning we want this particular record. So when I double click and send it down, now we have a helper column. And if I scroll all the way down, and there it is. The criteria we need for this helper column is going to be the word true. Now notice we're going to need this helper column field name, because that'll be our only criteria for this entire column here. Control C, and now I'm going to go over to AFC helper column. Now notice I already started to set this up. I'm going to Control V. There is the field name in the data set. The criteria for extracting the record is true. And watch this. We're going to need country, right? So back over here, we're going to need the actual column country, and then those years further over. So when I click on AF7HC, there it is. This will be the criteria for which columns to extract. Now this is on a different sheet. I'm going to click in an empty cell, Alt-AQ, copy to another location. List range, I'm clicking back on AF7 dataset, clicking on helper 3, Control-Shift right arrow, Control-Shift down arrow, tab. So there we got that from that other sheet. Criteria, there it is, helper 3 and true. Tab, copy to. I want to tell it only certain columns, so I highlight all the way to 2010. And you're not going to believe this when I click OK. There it is from that huge data set. Now let's do some formatting to make this an awesome professional report. I'm first going to highlight all these numbers, Control 1. And I want to go to number, use a comma separator. I do not need decimals. Not only that, I'm going to amend this built-in number formatting by coming down to custom. And if I come to the end here, we learned this all the way back in video number 1. We can, in essence, hack off thousands or millions by putting an extra comma. If I put 1 comma, it cuts it out by 3 zeros or 1,000. If I type a second comma, that means I'm going to only show up to the million. This is number formatting. It's not rounding the formula. When I click OK, there are our numbers. Now I'm going to highlight the columns and try and change all of the column widths with one fell swoop. I'm going to click and drag. And so there we go. Now I'd like to highlight alternative columns here. So I'm using the Control key to highlight columns not next to each other. I want to add formatting for alternating columns. This will help make it easier to read. Now I'm going to go up to Home, click the drop down. And I think it's that one right there. Now I want to turn off the grid line, so I'll go up to View, Uncheck Grid Lines. And there is our report. We could highlight this and print it out. In fact, let's do just that. I'm going to use Page Layout. There's the dialog launcher for page setup. I'm going to use the keyboard Alt-PSP. By the way, that works in Word also. All right, I definitely want it landscape. Fit to 1 page wide by 1 page tall. Margins, I'm going to center it horizontally only. Header and footer. I could add whatever header and footer. I'm going to add page 1 of question mark, even though I only have 1 page. This is going to be with a bunch of other handouts, and so I want them to know that this is 1 of 1. And then over on Sheet, I want to limit the area because I don't want any of this advanced filter stuff to print out. So in Print Area, I'm going to highlight. And when I click OK, Control P, check that out. There is our report based on advanced filter. Now, I want you to remember something. This was based on a formula and a helper column. If we go over to AF7, Control Home to jump to the top, I want you to notice that we did add this helper column. Most of the time, we can add a helper column to a data set. But sometimes we cannot mess with the data set at all. So advanced filter has no problem. As long as you're able to create a helper column formula, if we use this exact formula instead of the word true over in our criteria area, we actually use the formula. Advanced filter will see that there's a formula there, and in memory, copy it down as if there were a helper column. So I'm going to do a trick. I actually am going to need sheet references. If I copy and paste this, these would not change. So I'm going to cut it with Control X. When you Control X a formula that's pointing at certain cells on this sheet, when you paste it, it will create sheet references. So now I'm going to go over to AF7 with a formula. And in the cell where the word true was for our last helper column example, I'm going to Control V, F2. And notice it got all of the right sheet references. Now, why is it false? Because if we go back over to our data set, and now I'm going to copy this one up to replace it. Whoop. Because, of course, it's looking at only the first one, which has false. Now, let's go try this. This is truly remarkable. And you can put whatever word, column name, or any text here, or you can keep it empty. We are still going to have two cells for advanced filter to know what to do. I'm going to type formula criteria, colon, and enter. Now I'm going to click in an empty cell, Alt-A-Q, copy to another location. The list range, it's on the other sheet, so I click AF7. And I'm not going to highlight these helper columns to prove that we don't need those. And actually, I'll delete those and show you that it still works. But I'm going to click in the top cell. Control-Shift, right arrow, Control down arrow, Tab. Criteria range, there it is. Advanced filter is actually smart enough to see that there is a formula there. And in memory, it will take it and copy it down as if it was next to the data set. Tab, copy to. This is, in essence, where we tell advanced filter which columns we want. And now when I click OK, same exact numbers based on formula criteria. Now, I should have deleted the actual helper columns first to prove it to you, but if I delete them now, Control-Shift, down arrow, delete, it all works perfect. Now I'm going to Control-Z to leave that as a trail. Wow, advanced filter, that is pretty amazing. We used advanced filter to do quite complex criteria with either a helper column over in our data set and then the criteria true, or over here we actually created the formula and advanced filter in memory, copied it down as if it was a helper column. Back on AF6, we saw how to create formulas in the criteria area. But the differences we had are field names here. So it took the straight criteria in the cell and we extracted by year. Over on AF5, we saw how to extract unique records only. On AF4, we did complex criteria with and or criteria. On AF3, we did contains criteria. AF2, we did or criteria. And AF1, we did and criteria. Advanced filter, pretty amazing. Now, in our next few videos, we'll talk more about Power Query. All right, we'll see you next video.